Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet, in your ears and on your laptops. Our guest for episode number 331 is Alexandra Oliver. She'll be here in just a few minutes, but before we get in, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all we do because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet. That includes sharing, saying on social media tomorrow, hey, I love the Rattlecast. I loved talking to Alexandra Oliver. It was a great episode, really fun to write the prompt poem. Do all that, and that'll help poetry spread, and we'll get more people loving each other and healing, which is what poetry is all about. So we're going to go first, like we always do, to our Poets Respond poet and a friend of the show, been around a bit. Morrow Dowdle is here. Hey, Morrow, great to see you.
Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's definitely my pleasure. It's your first time in Poets Respond, but I guess your second time in Rattle. And I loved the story behind this poem. It was one of those where, you know, just the story was just so interesting. And then where you took it to was another leap into meaningfulness, if that's a word. So tell us what the story is and how you decided to write a poem about it.
Absolutely. Well, first I have to give credit to my husband because he's so good at finding amazing, interesting stories on the internet and then passing them along to me if he thinks they'll be of interest. So the story that I wrote about was from an article that was published on Valentine's Day about a woman in a village in India who was going to have to marry a man she didn't love. It was an arranged marriage, but she actually already had a secret love also in the village. And so when the time came for her to marry, she contrived a plot to make it look as though she had transformed into a snake and therefore disappeared without a trace other than the snakeskin that was left behind. And she was able to do this because of a myth common to the culture in that village of a supernatural woman who can transform herself into a snake. And I just really loved the story, not only because I'm just a fan of magic and the occult in general, but also because it really resonated with me, especially during, these times when the Epstein case is still unfolding, stories of women resisting, the fates that are sort of handed to them. That's certainly a compelling story to me anytime.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a story. We had a poem about it last week. The news that's going on there is just it sort of like lingers in the background. It's like a dark shadow on everything right now. And to see this, which is in a way an uplifting story, but also a story about, social injustice and all sorts of other things. It's really cool to have a poem combine all these things together. Do you want to go ahead and read it?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. Try to make her. And the epigraph is, many villagers were convinced that something supernatural had occurred. And that's from the article titled, Young Woman in India Fakes Snake Transformation to Escape Arranged Marriage, from News Web Journal, February 14th, 2026. Try to make her marry the wrong man, and she becomes more myth than woman. She sheds herself, no body left. No more breasts or crotch to be felt up by the wrong hands on a wedding night so vile it might as well be death. She leaves only what she's willing, necklace, dress, and on them the empty length, silver, scaled, underbelly ribbed like a shining ladder. Matter draped across the bed she'll never lie in again. The skin translucent as she is, only when she wants you to know something. And it's this: love exists, and she found it, even if it was without permission. If there was hope, she'd have to shape it. If magic gives her safe passage from the village, let her cast it. Let it trick the parents, the citizens who would imprison her by forced alliance, if it is an irreverent way to evade a so-called fate, if it hurts some feelings by its manner, let those tears fall silent on the ears of spirits who remain unconjured.
Yeah, it's a powerful and fascinating poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Morrow. It's been
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, it was great to share that, and great to hear from you again.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was Morrow Dowdle with her poem, Try to Make Her. That's from Poets Respond, of course. You can submit your poems about anything having to do with current events. It can be unusual stories in those sort of small newspapers. It can be larger, big stories everyone's talking about. Anything that that is in the news and you want to write about it by Friday night at midnight. Submit it for Poets Respond. Go up to rattle.com under content. You'll find it there. Submit it by midnight, and we publish a poem every Sunday about current events. Also, to get those poems by email in your inbox, all you got to do is go to the bottom of any page at Rattle in the footer and find the email sign-up tab. Sign up for your daily poem by email, and you'll get poems like that there every day. Poems from our current issue, a Ekphrastic Challenge, the prompt poem of the month, all that wonderful stuff, including Poetry Respond. So make sure you sign up if you're not already. Then we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Alexandra Oliver. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Alexandra Oliver. Alex was a finalist for the 2025 Rattle Poetry Prize. She's the author of 3 collections published through Biblioasis, Meeting the Tormentors and Safeway, Let the Empire Down, and most recently, Hail the Invisible Watchman. Oliver is a past co-editor of Measure for Measure, an anthology of poetic meters, as well as the formalist journal The Rotary Dial. She has performed her work on CBC Radio and NPR, as well as the National Poetry Slam. Oliver teaches creative writing at the University of Toronto and OCAD University. And here she is, Alexandra Oliver. Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Hi, Tim. It's really nice to be here. Hello, everyone. And to anyone and everyone who's tuned in. Thank you for tuning in. Morrow, that was a wonderful poem. I left a comment just a second ago. It's really lovely to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for being here. It's fascinating. I think we're going to talk about this more, but there aren't that many poets who are both write formal poetry and have a background in slam. So I'm very curious about the nexus of those two. But we have a whole bunch of books. We're going to run through a few poems from each of your books. Do you want to start with Sexual History from the first book, Meeting the Tormentors and Safeway?
Absolutely. I'll read it, and then you can ask me whatever questions you want to ask me, Tim.
Sure.
Okay. So sexual history. Actually, I'll probably preface this, set this up by saying my husband is a very discreet man, and he always stipulated to me that he never wanted to know about anything that had happened in my checkered past. So I didn't until I wrote this poem. Sexual history. Under my window, they stood with their hands waving tickets to Carmen and keys to the Porsche. They had cups full of sugar and cables to start up the car in the parking lot. matches and pens and the right time of day on the path in the park. They were gentle with animals, children, and plants, and used words like forever and always and now. When they vanished, their feet walked away with no sound in the past, in the dark, under wraps, underground. Oh, the men before you, they were tow-haired and tall. Oh, the men before you, they were square and morose. They had bat wings for souls and racks of gray teeth and a family somewhere that I'd never meet. They had hundreds of poker chips stacked by the bed, and instead of declaring their love made them weak, they would give me commands through their suffering phones, using words like don't know and unsure and not now, hanging up, leaving only the feeling of down. Oh, they did me a favor, the men before you, as they dug themselves deep in the past, underground.
Yeah, that's good. That was Sexual History from Alexandra Oliver's first book, Meeting the Tormentors in Safeway. And I'm really curious about your background, Alex. How did you start writing poetry, and really this journey from through slam into formal meter to where did you first encounter a poem? I'm always curious about like that first like love story where you read a poem and you loved it and wanted to do more of that.
I grew up in a family in Vancouver with, very eccentric older parents. My father loved poems and he had a library of poetry. So my dad had Walt Whitman, Ogden Nash, W.H. Auden, Wordsworth, loads and loads and loads of poetry. And I learned that I could get a rise out of him if I recited things at the dining room table. And I was lucky also in that I went to school in the 70s and 80s. By school, I mean elementary school and high school, where we had to memorize poems and recite poems. So we had to memorize, for example, W.B. Yeats' The Second Coming or The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. And then we would have to we'd get frog marched up to the front of the class and we'd have to recite this poetry. And Latin, we had to recite poetry in Latin as well. So we did Catullus and Ovid and Janus Pannonius and all that stuff. And so that it stuck with me. It became, rather than poetry being a chore, it became like a fun thing you could do. And then I ended up doing theater in university, and I did theater and film. I didn't want to be an actor. I wasn't a tremendously good actor, but I wanted to be a theater and a film critic. And but I did like performing, but I found that writing and performing poems was more satisfying because I could create the whole universe around me, essentially. And so I got involved in the poetry scene in Vancouver, and the slam scene was sort of rising up from its roots in Vancouver after like the success of like the Green Mill Tavern in Chicago, and Vancouver was sort of, there were places like there was the Railway Club and the Press Club and where slams were happening. And eventually they put a team together, and it was the first team from Canada to go to the Nationals. And we went in 1996, and then 1998, it got captured in a documentary called Slam Nation, an American documentary. And then I kept going and going and going and performing, writing and performing. And then I started sort of, I wanted to send stuff out to journals, and I realized I had to be less performative and sort of more thoughtful, and looking at the poem on the page and how it would be received by a quiet readership rather than a listenership. Because when you go to the slam, it's like you're editing as you go, and you're sort of counting on the response of an audience. So it was a new challenge, and so I started writing for the page. And then flash forward, I had a kid, and I thought, well, where am I going to go with all this? And then I decided to go back and do an MFA. And I went to the University of Southern Maine Stone Coast program, And my graduate thesis was picked up immediately by Biblioasis, and that became my first book. And so I went essentially from the stage to the page. But to this day, I love both of those components. I love sort of reaching inwards and reaching outwards, and putting the word into people's ear, in more ways than one.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating. And that was really the peak. I mean, it's so fun, I imagine, to be participating in something that's like on the rise like that. And, when Slam Nation came out, I was at a poetry slam. I think I've been to two in the mid-aughts, I think is the time. Because we did a slam poetry issue back then, too, in like 2006 or so. And it's just, there's so much energy there, which is something that you didn't see before, and I don't think you've seen since. I don't know when the pinnacle of it was, but I'm just wondering, do you miss those days of having a sort of more intense physical space reading? I mean, it's really fun to have so many viewers watching live and talking in the chat, but it's so different than that energy, which is this like communal focus. And so I don't know. I mean, what was that experience like?
It was great. It was kind of really affirming. I was in my mid-20s at the time. And, so you're still in that period where you feel, at least I did, you feel a certain measure of, insecurity about your place in the world. And it was a very affirming space to be in. And it was, we had a wonderful, diverse bunch around us. Wonderful diverse bunch, lots of voices, lots of just different kinds of poetry, different kinds of people, and it was very supportive and just great fun. Going to the National Poetry Slam was like going to camp. It was absolutely like the stories, absolutely glorious, and some naughty things as well. But one thing that gives me great joy now is teaching at OCAD in Toronto, which is the big art school. Is the creative writing scene at OCAD is absolutely wonderful. I'm surrounded by students who, there's a wonderful, fiercely loyal group of creative writers, and many of them are devoted to performance. So it's like a renaissance for me. I go and I hear these students reading and discussing poetry, and it's not that I'm back in the 90s, because everything has changed, right? But I feel great hope and great optimism, and it's nice to be part of that as a professor as opposed to just a participant.
Yeah, definitely. And it's given the technology, if you think back in the 90s, the internet was here, but it was still the days of dial-up for those who remember it. And, you couldn't have something like a video performance. If you wanted to download a poem through AOL, I don't know how long it would have taken with the beeps and the boops and then the waiting and the waiting and the waiting. Yeah. And so now we're living this age where you can stream and be live and have that energy and spontaneity and all that coming through in a totally different medium. So it's really, it feels like we're sort of ripe to have a new renaissance in performance poetry. And so it's cool to hear you say that. I want to talk more about this, but let's hear the next poem. I want to make sure we get at a good pace.
Okay, sure thing. So the next poem is called "How Are You, Bunny?" And I'll preface this by saying I live in sort of a Lester B. Pearson / Trudeau the First era brutalist apartment complex in just outside of Toronto. And we don't have ensuite washers and dryers, so many people converge in the laundry room every day. This is a poem about the laundry room, and this happened, really. It's called "How Are You, Bunny?" And Bunny's standing in the laundry room, her mottled knuckles round a jug of cheer. A year ago, it would have been Ron here, but now the park below is in full bloom and Ron is gone. They took away his chair, his IV stand, his magazines, his stains, the view he loved, his lake and rusting cranes. None of this, of course, is my affair. The sordid load I toss to chase the words, but none will do. No sentiments outclean the leading brand, that bastard, Mr. Death. Outside, the wires throng with grimy birds. I hear it as she shuts the last machine. I'm fine. To no one on her change-cold breath.
Yeah, that was How Are You, Bunny, a Miltonic sonnet, I believe, from Meeting the Tormentors in Safeway, again by Alexandra Oliver, an earlier book. And you can see the formal elements coming through in that poem, whereas the last poem felt a little bit more performance-oriented, with it was based on more rhythm and energy in the voice than the formal elements like you see in the sonnet here. And I'm always really interested in the difference between the two, because we call it all poetry, but there is such a big difference between doing it orally in a group. And I think the group is the key, actually, because it feels like there's, to me, a totally different, like, I don't know what to call it. So I'm always curious to see how people experience it, but there's like a different nexus of energy or something. There's like, because it's the collective within a poetry slam. With that audience, it's sort of like everybody's minds and hearts and emotions sort of tuning to the same wavelength. And so there's this like mass of like wave of emotion that you feel when it's done right. Like similar to like a religious revival or some kind of, sermon, and everybody's like really like, there's just this collective energy. It's harder. I don't know how else to express it. And then page poetry is like the opposite in a way, because it's like this narrow focused of like one voice whispering in your ear almost. And it's like the one-on-one intimacy of that is like the power of page poetry. So I'm really curious in how you see the difference between the two, given this big leap from the stage to the page.
The difference between the two, I would say, like you said, it's more intimate, but it's more, you can deal with, in the case of this poem, it felt very much, it was always a page poem, right? It's about discrete matters. It's about home matters, right? The poem is about that thing. You know how it is, like, you say, how are you? And then you find out that someone is not fine, right? So there's a performance going on in this little poem, because the speaker is asking the person, are you fine? And the person's partner has died, and the speaker doesn't know this and only finds that out later, but is told as this performance of niceness or normalcy, I'm fine. And so this, I think, a topic like this, it's sort of, it's in a room, right? It's kind of in a little intimate room, and the reader can examine it, and it would feel almost, I don't know, not tawdry, but it would feel inappropriate, I think, to be bellowing this out with like a bourbon in your hand, at the Railway Club. It would feel wrong. It would feel wrong with regards to the person who was Bunny, who had a different name, but there was a Bunny, right? Mm-hmm. It just wouldn't feel right. It would feel sort of borderline exploitative. And so there is, I will say I am always aware of performing for people, or at least giving something to people when I'm writing a poem. It's never, oh, this is just for me. It's, let me tell you a story. Mm-hmm. Or let me show you. For me, it's like telling someone a story when I write for the page, or showing someone a short film, like a home movie, or part of a longer movie. There's always something presentational, because I think that's baked into my consciousness, because of the nature of who I am, and also my experience coming to poetry. But there's a difference in registers, definitely.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. So did you think, like, in what ways does that idea of performing, and even if there's the two registers of performing, thinking about poems as performances, how does that influence the way you approach writing for the page? How do those elements come in?
I think that you can leave. I think that you're always inviting your reader or your listener to contribute and to fill in the gaps. So I think for me, it's not telling too much, but showing. It's using rhythm, sometimes rhyme or form, but always imagery and metaphors and, abstraction, I think, to a certain extent, using them judiciously where the reader can supply something. So there's always a dialogue going on. It's not, I'm now going to tell you a bunch of stuff. I always think of how would the reader anticipate this? How would they process this? How can I make them think along with me, feel along with me? So, and it's the same thing when you're standing on stage. You're not just standing there with a megaphone, hopefully just bellowing things out. I always say to students, when you're reading something out to a crowd and you feel a little nervous, I always say, do the quadrant rule. So mentally divide the room. I'm not blessing you for, by the way, but divide the room into 4 parts, or maybe I am, and pick one friendly face in each of those 4 quadrants in the audience. And, you'll have 4 people at least to keep in your mind and think, how are they receiving the poem? You can think of everyone receiving the poem, but what I say to students is you have 4 friendly faces who are working with you as the poem comes out. And when you write for the page, it is just you, but you also have to imagine people out there, people listening. Philip Larkin has an absolutely wonderful poem about a radio broadcast. I can't remember the name of the poem, but he imagines, like the voices listening. And so you always keep the ears listening, excuse me. So you always keep those ears and those consciousnesses in mind.
Yeah. Another thing about the performance world is that it feels like people sort of move on from it. It's not just that Poetry Slam is sort of, past its peak, but, we talked to Patricia Smith way back in that issue in 2006 or whenever it was. And she was talking about how, and I think she was a 3-time National Poetry Slam champion, and just wonderful book. But she was talking about how she felt like it was almost too easy. Like she sort of got the way that it works, and she wanted to explore other things. And so she felt like she was moving past that. I remember her saying like she felt like she had the audience in the palm of her hand, and it was like she wanted to do more than that. And I wonder if you've experienced that too, in that like there's a certain mode that works when you're performing. And I think you can be either be like funny or like emotionally powerful and rending because of that way that the poems, the collective nature comes together, Did you feel like that's limiting though, as a goal? And even if you moved away from slam, like would you naturally move away from slam anyway?
I think so. I will say I have seen Patricia perform, and I saw her win the slam, and I also had the pleasure of working with her, studying under her, and working with her at Stonecoast at the University of Southern Maine. And I will say that she had a much sort of more nuanced spectrum of effects when she was performing. But that being said, there's so many poets who stand on stage and they're able to do extraordinary things. But I think, and definitely during the slam, you got an idea of the gamut of things that were expected of you. And things like, it was like kind of almost like watching figure skating, and you watch the person before you and you think, how is their program like my program? And, do I have enough jumps? And do I have a death spiral? And so there were certain things that you tried to get across, and you wanted to move the audience or you wanted to make them laugh. Making them laugh was a big thing for me. And I did this shtick where I would stay completely po-faced, and I would use this very kind of stilted umpity meter to deliver like sort of, really like sort of morbid, snippets of, and now parts of it kind of bug me because I look at it and I think, oh, I tried so hard. Oh no. And it feels a bit leaden when I see footage online. But you come to the page, you can get away with things, you can, number one, it's easier to sort of weave in the influences of people that you like, that you read. And you can play with things, in a different way. You can sort of use, I think, finer strokes, maybe, although there are fine strokes used in performance. It's easier to kind of get away from this very hubristic sense of like, I'm going to nail the landing. I'm going to like pull this off and nail the landing and people will cheer and huzzah. And when you're writing a book, it's different. It's like you serve the poem and you serve the book, right? And you sort of put care into it. And in the best case scenario, you try to kind of immerse yourself in the work in a way that is sort of, you try to show humility and you try to take risks and you try to, just be as sort of sensitive and sensible as you can.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely does. Let's hear the next poem up. And this is from the next book up too. So the first ones are from Meeting the Tormentors and Safeway. This can be from Let the Empire Down. Do you want to read Plans?
I'm going to read Plans. I'm going to preface this by saying this poem takes place in Glasgow, Scotland. Thornton's Classics is a brand of chocolates like Black Magic. Hello is sort of a tabloidy picture magazine. And I will start with Plans. Mid-morning, here I sit with splayed out hands, womanly and worked with on the towel. The manicurist, 20 at the most, is pretty in her bow-necked carbon dress. The shop has not been open for a week. A box of Thornton's Classics stands uneaten on a table by a copy of Hello. She has a job. Someone has told her so. If she were made to do it, she's uncertain. And if she were uncertain, would she speak? Plucking metal clippers from a glass, she starts to pick away, a little lost, until the rip, the blood, the muted howl, I'm sorry, meaning not what I had planned. A half an hour before, this girl had told me how she loved her small town school back home, excelled in sciences, rejoiced in donning lab coats to untuck the life from frogs, set fire to wide hip flasks, lean in to watch the magnified amoebae wink and burble coyly in the petri dish, a hand unshaking on the arm of her best friend. A girl's future should be full and bright, a marble, but alas for her, there is a catch. We take on the immediate. Hope flags. Wishing to be wise and come out shining, we pop a beaker over our own flame. We do it cheerfully. We do it coldly. Tamping down the soggy, trembling cotton on my bleeding cuticle, she asks, "What color?" Meaning, how can I do better when I know the business isn't in me? Look, I want to say, I've done it too. Sold candlesticks I'd never care to clean, told women that a lipstick made them young, gone drinking with the after-hours gang. I've told admirers things I didn't mean and said to students, it'll come to you. The wrong direction never treats you kindly. I long to tell her that it doesn't matter. There's a way to live and shirk the axe, though what that is, I've probably forgotten.
Yeah, so that was a poem from, once again, Let the Empire Down by Alexandra Oliver. That was Plans, a poem in blank verse, and a very much, Robert Frostian mode, the narrative blank verse poem, sharing that. So how do you go about writing poems? And we talked about slam and performing. And we see, the formal elements take center stage, no pun intended here. How do you approach a poem from that formal perspective? Do you know which meter you're starting with, among other things?
There's no hard and fast rule. Sometimes a line sticks in your head, apropos of nothing. Like, you may not be thinking about the topic, but the line will just kind of wedge itself in you like a nail. And you'll just take that line and you'll riff off it. And one of the great pleasures, and when I studied with Annie Finch, and Annie Finch showed me this, was taking meter and just playing with using the meter and seeing what you come up with and where your mind goes by free association, and sort of, pulling this thread of unacknowledged truth out of yourself. But sometimes you sit down and you say you're going to set yourself a challenge. It's like crossword brain or, Wordle brain. You say, oh, be fun to write a sestina. What about this topic? I've been thinking around this for a while. And then you just make lists of words, and then you try to play with things. And, sometimes the form does not necessarily suit the medium. Like, by medium, I mean the material that is within the world of the poem. So, for example, if it's a narrative story, like if it's a straightforward narrative that you want to investigate, a sestina or a pantoum, or a rondeau might not suit your needs because it's very circular. And especially with the sestina and the pantoum, there's this element of, and the villanelle to a certain extent, there's this idea of things coming back to you and obsessiveness, things being revisited. In terms of my subject matter, I listen very, very closely to dreams. If I keep having the same dreams over and over and over and over again, if something keeps popping up, for some reason right now, I'm having lots of dreams about ski hills, has nothing to do with the Olympics, right? This was even before, like ski hills, hiking trails, abandoned hotels. So obviously my consciousness is trying to tell me something. So I keep notes on these things, and then I draw from this material. If I'm watching a film or a show, some element may jump out at me, a line, and I won't specifically write about the film or the show, but I'll take something, I'll pull one image or one line and then riff around that for a while. But I think it's very, very important to, I say this to myself, and I say this to students and to people I workshop with. It's very important not to have like what I'll call the concept album phenomenon going in your head, where you're like, I must write a poem on this specific topic, and it must be like this, and it must end like this, and then there'll be a whole collection with this, whole schema governing it, and it will start like this, and it will crescendo like this, and then it will end like this. You can't, because your consciousness has other plans, and the poem has other plans, especially if you're playing with form and you allow that playfulness to come out. If you do that, then I think unexpected elements will emerge. And that's one of the infuriating things about making poems, Tim, but it's also one of the more pleasurable things about making poems.
Yeah, I love what you said, that phrase used, unacknowledged truth, and how that's what we all should be writing for. Yeah. And it's really easy to sort of fall victim of writing toward acknowledged truth, I guess. I mean, it's that unacknowledged aspect that's so important, because, writing toward what we think we know ends up being not writing toward the truth. So it's really fascinating to hear you put it that way. Do you often find yourself, falling into that rut of knowing where you're going? Or at this point, have you trained yourself really well to not follow that? Really what it is the left brain, that the emissary rather than the master guiding you. Do you find yourself falling into that rut still?
Sometimes I do. And like the new poems I'm working on right now have a particular uniting theme, because I thought to myself for a long time, I want to write about a bunch of poems about this. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to give it away. But I will say one element is hedonism and the night, and without being more specific. And I had a particular, I remember, and I had to kind of articulate this in a very, very, very systematic way because I was applying for a grant. So I planned out this whole book, like ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And then I looked at this plan for the book and I thought, oh, this is big snooze. But, you know, off it went for the application, didn't get the grant. Oh, well. But what I say to myself is, okay, I have this particular set of themes in mind, and there are a certain number of themes that I want to achieve. Like, I'd like to get back into writing more funny poems, like incorporate more funny poems. I would like to explore these particular worlds. I would like to try more things in persona, but within these particular worlds. And then just give yourself sort of a big arena to play with, and then just see what you're naturally drawn to. And just, you know, again, I hate the expression trust the process. It's sort of been co-opted in social media. But to a certain extent, you have to let the making take over for you. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And really, I mean, it's central to everything, I think. Poetry sort of has no relevance and might as well be written by ChatGPT otherwise. So let's hear the next poem, The Little Machines. And again, this is another poem from Let the Empire Down. Yeah.
The Little Machines. Okay. The Little Machines. This is the bird we love in the gold cage, turning the key and waiting. Coming of age, knowing it's old and precious, those feathers, that tar black beak. We set the cage down and listen. For an antique, how fine it is at singing, turning its gilded throat, soaring in both directions on the same note. The eyes don't tear or blink as the bright wings click and rustle over the black felt mat. The gears sigh and whistle. The bird's intelligent voice betrays no vital despair. It will break rather than die. It doesn't care.
Yeah, and that was The Little Machines. Again, we're looking at poems by Alexandra Oliver from her first two books. And since we're doing sort of a spread of books, Alexandra, and people might be wanting to check some out, can you like sort of walk through just the difference between the books, like what, you know, how the theme shifted over time?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Show and Tell. This is the first one. Meeting the Tormentors in Safeway. This came out of my MFA graduate thesis, and basically it's a postpartum depression book. It's about living in the suburbs and you know, raising a little boy and or raising a child in general, and being in the suburbs and feeling like, even though this place is supposedly neat and tidy and perfect, something is wrong. I'm a city person. I like cities, and I've always found suburbs, for whatever reason, a little bit eerie and liminal. So there was this one. And then the next one was Let the Empire Down. This one was written in 2016. The first one was 2013. And the first one won the Pat Lowther Memorial Award in 2014, which is a prize for Canadian female women poets. Go me, yay. This one was nominated for the same award. And Let the Empire Down is sort of about leaving home and sort of trying to escape and redefine your environment and your views. And it was written when we lived in Glasgow, Scotland, from 2015 to 2012 to 2015, excuse me. And so, you know, it's sort of about living. There are a lot of Glasgow poems in here, and there are a lot of film poems in here. There's a big section devoted to cinema poems, and there's a section on Federico Fellini. And then there was a brief, and then there was an interlude And I wrote this one. On the oven sits a maiden for, gosh, what was the press? It was, Frog Hollow Press. That's right. And it is technically a chapbook, and it is based on Kadar and Close's book, The Shop on Main Street. And has lots of lovely little visual details in it. And it's about this man who is a worker, and he is sort of co-opted by the fascist party in Slovakia in his little town to take over this haberdashery owned by this Jewish widow. And he ends up coming to love her and then betraying her terribly. So this is a series of poems that were inspired by that wonderful film. And then lastly, there is Hail the Invisible Watchman, which came out in 2022. And it's inspired largely by what the pandemic did to people. Like, people hunkered down in the suburbs, and all of a sudden there was this vortex of loneliness and projection and suspicion, and sort of how people spun away from one another. And it's a three-part book. Its themes are slightly similar to the first book, but now with added pandemic.
That's great. Well, that is fascinating, though. I mean, and in your poem from Rattle 2, Gated Community, which we'll read later, I think, is also about the suburbs and that gated community phenomenon. And it's really interesting, trying to, as you say, wanting to capture the mood of the suburbs. It's something that seems difficult to do in poetry. It seems like maybe like the least poetic place mankind or the universe has ever created. And yet you have this eerie quality that you find. Is it difficult to make poems there? Because I find myself either wanting to go to a city or the country for inspiration, if that exists. And the suburbs is like, oh my God, how am I going to write about this monotony? So how do you approach that? And it's just interesting.
You can't just sort of sit back Wordsworth like with a piece of grass, between your teeth, and like with your, hands clasped behind your head. You have to really pony up when you write in the suburbs, because the suburbs is designed for culture, and they're designed for culture and convenience and uniformity, generally speaking. And so you have to pay very close attention to where people veer away from that. So I always tell students, to use what Ziga Vertov called camera eye and radio ear. So go out and listen to, like, not in a creepy way, but listen to people and watch people, and watch for the minutiae of how people are interacting in like some completely neutral space. Like I don't know if you have a Costco. Whenever I go to Costco, part of the reason is I want to buy a wall of toilet paper or like 5 boxes of shreddies. But the other reason is because like, I've got to do some work. So I go and I walk the aisles and I watch how people are interacting, what's happening over at the sample stations. And then I make notes. This stuff becomes my research. So you go out into these ordinary spaces and you see them as sort of sites of hidden drama and intrigue. And you have to watch how sort of friendship groups treat each other in the suburbs, because I found that there was, especially when we first arrived, we moved from Seattle, and there was a lot of sort of jockeying for position amongst the mothers in my son's school. And so but you have to contribute. Right? You have to watch and you have to listen, and you can't just sort of, you have to be creative, but there's a lot there.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I'm looking at the clock. We got to move more through poems. Let's do Mr. Katz closes up.
Mr. Katz closes up.
Yeah.
Okay, and all right. And this is in the voice of a barber who is confronting Mr. Burtko, who has co-opted this widow's haberdashery. Do you propose to join us, Mr. Burtko? You of our own ally, shepherd, companion, Why do you ask why we garnish our jackets with stars? We who ran shops, shuffled files, and buried your dead. Have you no clue that your lot is no equal to ours, Gentile street greeter? Where is the saving battalion? This is the law. These are the rapids ahead. We who have nothing, we are about to go under. What's there to wonder? Do you propose to join us, Mr. Burko? Think of the people I've shaved and I've trimmed to perfection, struggled with toddlers, readied the nervous for weddings 40-odd years with a towel and a blade in my hand. I nodded, donated, and headed community meetings. None of it won me the luxury of your protection. Only a barn full of hair and farewell from the band. Promises that we'll be back on the high street by fall. Nothing at all. Do you propose to join us, Mr. Burko? I am not wise. It feels so unspeakably sudden. All that I know is that when the law's finger is pointed down at the innocent, that is the end of the clowns, the judge and the cop, and the bishop will finish as tainted. Each signature stamp as puny and firm as a button. And where will you go? With your silence, your bag full of crowns, you hiding your carpenter's face like a thumb in a thimble. The end will be simple.
Yeah, so that was another poem from On the Oven Sits a Maiden. That was Mr. Katz closes up from that really interesting sounding chapbook. And you hear a really different rhythm in that poem. And I'm always curious, you also co-edited Measure for Measure, that anthology of formal meters. And how is it, what is your experience of meter? We had Annie Finch on, who you mentioned before, and she talks about all the different ways that other meters besides iambic are overlooked. And what's your experience with the other meters? Do you feel similarly to Annie in that they have different sort of emotional energies, which is her sort of perspective on that?
I do. And I'm going to join Annie on the good ship Dactyl, because I love dactyls. And dactyls are, they're the meter behind the Iliad and the Odyssey. And they're quite... it's a waltz, but there's something very there's a real undertow feeling to the dactyl. And I write a lot of stuff in dactyls, and maybe that was part of Annie's influence, but I find the dactyl is incredibly versatile. And I think that meters have their own sort of propulsive energy. Sometimes that energy it bifurcates in different emotional directions. But I always encourage students, and I do this myself, is just drill yourself in a meter. Just say, I'm going to write 20 lines unrelated, not about anything specific, but like in trochaic tetrameter, for example. And then, fill the boat with rusty biscuits or whatever. It may mean complete, rubbish, but you may get something in there, like something may be pulled out of you. So I think, yeah, there are distinct energies in there. And it's nice to see stuff, other than iambs in rotation. Although, I have used iambs on many occasions. And then there are other things that are fun to work with, like sapphics and like this particular poem, there's like a staggered push me pull you feeling, where there's this sense of somebody resisting through challenging, right? But there's this sense of the ends will not come together, because this incredible disharmony that is going to culminate in cruelty and disaster has already taken hold. There's already a disconnect. So, like you don't have all this brewing in your head when you sit down to write the poem, but sometimes when you have something in the back of your head, the meter will take over and pull more of that good stuff out of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, really interesting and well said.
Thanks.
Let's move on to the next book, the most recent one, Hail the Invisible Watchman. But first, I should say, if you're enjoying this conversation, please do click the like button. Always helps if you click like. That helps poetry spread around. If you're watching later, listening on Spotify or iTunes or whatever, make sure you leave a review or something like that too. That helps a lot. Also, if you have any questions for Alex, please leave them in the chat window, especially on YouTube. Helps if you put questions all in bold, and then I can pass any questions along before we wrap up this segment. But let's hear the next poem, 17.
Okay, 17. So this is about child tennis. Okay. 17 circle the rim of the gym in orbit around the instructor who yells and yells and yells. They listen to him. The fathers in hopefulness peer from the halls. 17 scissor their legs on the mats, slashing the air like quick little knives. They are told to develop their glutes and their lats. The fathers remember their whey-colored wives. 17 shoulder their bags to the courts. Their elders assure them it's not about winning, but wince as the possible pecks at their hearts. The fathers are fat and their forelocks are thinning. 17 play to the darkening hours, then peel off in columns, exhausted and little. They go to the washrooms and tremble in mirrors. The fathers bare teeth, lemon-tinted and brittle. 17 eight-year-old creatures are moving. They climb into vans. As if speaking to God, they venture, I think that I'm really improving. The fathers hit gas and set fire to the road.
Yeah, well, speaking of different meters, there's that, is it anapestic in that poem?
The 17 then peel off, and it's dactylic basically. It's
Dactylic.
Sort of dactylic with a bunch of it's a triple meter poem, but the pulse is like basically, I would say, dactylic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, really cool example of that. And I wanted to talk more about just teaching meter in academia, where most MFA programs don't. I mean, when I was an undergraduate, I had a teacher tell me not to write in meter, and other people have talked about that too. And then in an MFA, I happened to have one professor, Robert Mezzi, who taught in meter, but everybody else was like, no, this is old fashioned, don't do it. and it's just amazing to me that people can go through and say, I have a master's degree in poetry without any exposure to that. What has your experience been in teaching it, though? I'm really curious about how both receptive students are to learning meters, and also just how you approach teaching in the first place.
I teach it. I've had people say to me, it cannot be done. It can be done, but you have to be really inventive, and you have to sort of sweeten the medicine, as it were. So what I always tell people when I kick things off is I tell people about number stations. Number stations were these strange radio stations that were on hills during the Cold War across Europe. They had a bunch in England, and they would play a mysterious little recorded snippet of music, and then strings of numbers. And these could only be deciphered by spies, right? This was the purpose of these number stations. So everyone, PSA, look up number stations. And so I would tell students about number stations, and I said, this is going to sound so pre-digital, but I would say to students, now imagine if you could do that with a poem, because when you write a poem, you say a thing is a thing, and then you have some imagery and you have line length and all those things. But what if you could employ a pulse in your work that would underline your meaning or contradict your meaning and create another sort of channel for subversion, right? And then they lean in, like, "Ooh, tell us about that. How do you do that?" And so I just basically say, this is a tool. You don't have to use it in the future, but it will put it in your toolbox, because number one, you can use it to add an element of surprise and subversion and catchiness to your work. And also it will help you read other people's stuff. Like, it's very interesting when you see poets who have written in meter and then they stop writing in meter, but then you find when they talk about certain topics, they'll switch into meter. It almost feels inadvertent, but it's as if sort of there's a sonic hypnosis going on in those moments where they're discussing these topics. So I just say to students, wouldn't it be great if you had this thing and then you have another way to work, you have another way of being, cagey and, getting another meaning through. And they like that. Well, many of the students that I've met, and I've seen students use it in very intelligent and unexpected ways. So it's fun. It's fun for me to experiment with this stuff, and it's fun to see other people experimenting with it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. And one question I tend to ask when we have formal poets on, because, the goal of Rattle always is to have poetry be accessible to people. We want to have, like, if you leave a copy of Rattle in like a doctor's office and some random person picks it up who hasn't read a poem in many years since high school, picks it up and says, hey, that's pretty good. I like that. That's our goal. And one of the things we hear very often is, it doesn't even rhyme. And I wonder always if we didn't abandon meter and rhyme, if poetry would be more popular. Do you think so? Do you think having the dominance of sort of the free verse narrative, the confessional mode that doesn't have that regularity, do you think that gets in the way of poetry being a more fundamental art for contemporary culture?
It's an interesting question. I think I think that it's good to have everything. I think it's got to have everything. For one, I'm one of these people, for example, I think Anne Sexton's work it's very hot. And I know this is going back to the 1950s and 60s, but with its the radioactive material of its subject, I find that it's so beautifully housed within form. I think that you have room for everything. And, in Canada where I live, there's a huge avant-garde tradition. And some of that stuff is immensely satisfying and curious making for me. Like when I read poets like Lisa Robertson, where it's like, woo, the windmills of your mind. And there's all this language, it's language poetry, right? And so there's this play of words and ideas that is very not alien to me, but very different to what I do. But I find it to be a unique and very fulfilling experience because it's not the way I work, and therefore I can enjoy it in a sort of a fresh way. And we have people like Christian Book and who write sort of in these ways. So I think that, poetry is a big tent, and there should be room for everything, for all the things. But I think the problem occurs when you say, no, poetry is just this, or poetry is just this, or poetry shouldn't be like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, if you flip through Rattle, that's exactly what we're always trying to do with, every poem being different in feel and topic than the poem before, and everything being a surprise. And speaking of poems from Rattle, the next one up is Gated Community, that Rattle Poetry Prize finalist. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Gated Community. No, I was very honored that you chose this one. And I'll preface this by saying Granville and 16th is sort of where I imagine, and it's from my hometown of Vancouver, and it's sort of, I see it as the gateway between the domestic life and the public life. It's this cross street on South Granville, and then you can, it's the point where you can see the hill going down and taking you into the seething underbelly of downtown. Okay. Gated Community, Granville and 16th, 3 a.m. Look downhill. That's where all the action is. Across the big bridge, the clubs, the kids in bars. You know full well what the attraction is. Their lives are much more interesting than ours. Imagine where the florid lovers meet, in soiled glaucous hallways by the can. They smoke like kings and go and look at art. They never speak of where their lives began. Pay no mind to the ribbons of distress, the rubs, the snubs, the little flicks of venom are nothing to a dame, a lame dress. They wouldn't know an enemy from Adam. Now turn around and face the other way. Turn your back to the crew so newly gathered. It's not your wedding, nor is it your birthday. Your being here has never really mattered. Look uphill to the ghostly husks of houses, waiting as you leave the number 20. Between the sidewalk lamps, a river rises, memory, the sorrow shoal of plenty. Your home is on the market. Once you were young, loved, you know it now, but dumb as a plank. The horse has bolted and the swan has sung. There's no one left to torment or to thank.
Yeah, that's a great poem that is gated community from the still current issue of Rattle for a few more weeks by Alexandra Oliver. And let's see, I'm going to go to a few questions. And first off, John Arthur wants to know, have you ever set some of these poems to music? Some of these could totally be folk songs. I know you've written a libretto, which is interesting too. So how does that relationship work, and how often do you do that?
It's really interesting. There's a really great guy in Vancouver called, I think it's Rowan Lipkovitz. Can't remember his last name, but he's lovely. But he set a few of them to accordion, and who else? I've had, my brother Mark has set the Vampire Lovers to music, and he's done a really good job. But Mark's completely brilliant. I mean, he could make a hit out of a toothpaste commercial. He's really good at that stuff. So people have tried and done this. I haven't. I used to write songs when I was a teenager, and I don't know. It's fun. I'm always very honored when people put my poems to music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And this is a question from, I'm not sure how it's relevant, but Litomi is very consistent with this question. What do you think of Dostoevsky? Is there a reason that's a specific question?
I'm going to say, thanks for bringing this up. I love Dostoevsky. I adore Dostoevsky, actually. When I sort of went kind of rogue when I was about 12 years old, I sat in my bedroom and kind of stopped doing homework and just read Dostoevsky and like The Double and The Idiot and White Nights and Crime and Punishment. And I love Dostoevsky's a really good person to point out because he's always looking at how people behave on a number of levels. And one of my favorite stories of Dostoevsky is, I can't remember what it is called. I've had a very long day, but it's the one where the guy decides that he's going to be all benevolent and drop in, disgraceful affair. He's going to drop in on his sort of his employee's wedding and they'll be so happy to see me. I'm the boss. And he goes and he makes a complete tit of himself. And it's a total disaster. And I always thought that's such a wonderful story and so horrific. So Latomi, I'm with you there. I love Dostoevsky.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I mean, it's the height of prose fiction, really, just exploring human nature through that lens of the characters you can make in your own head. It's just amazing. And the observation is just, like you say, wonderful. And you can see why it relates to your poems, doing research at Costco. One more question, then we'll read the last poem.
Sure.
Odd Writings wants to know, are there any rules regarding the writing of poetry that you like to break, such as you should never do X?
You should never do X. Well, let me think. You should never. I think that sometimes people are nervous. I will kind of edge away from this. I'll say, people always say, write what you know. I think that that being said, it's always good to write in persona. It's good to try to be to imagine what the lives and perspectives of other people are like. That being said, you always have to be extremely sensitive, and of course, things like, writing across gender, writing across race, or whatever, it can be extremely problematic. But I mean, in terms of another person, if I wanted to imagine myself as, for example, a dentist, or I wanted to imagine myself as I don't know, like someone who wakes up and finds themselves at the bottom of a well, like a child finding themselves at the bottom of a well in the 18th century or whatever. You just have to imagine what these perspectives are like. So you don't necessarily have to confine yourself to sort of your biographical sphere. That being said, you should always be sensitive and aware when dealing with things that are outside your purview.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Yeah, definitely. That's a great one to bring up. It's not write what you know, but write what you genuinely want to know. Maybe is better
yes, what
advice.
You want to know.
Yeah.
Right
exactly.
to learn.
Yeah, right to learn. Right. Yeah, and again, it comes down to that unacknowledged truth. If you're writing to what you know, it's sort of a truth you've already acknowledged, and who cares about that? But it's the stuff that you haven't acknowledged yet. So yeah, that's perfect. Let's close out with one last poem, Alex.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say, folks. So this is new, and this poem appeared in a Canadian journal out of the University of New Brunswick called The Fiddlehead, and it's called Highcroft Disco. Highcroft is an area of Vancouver, and it begins with an epigraph. The monsters know you were there. And I'm going to change this epigraph because it was Lena Lovitch who wrote the lyrics for this song by Cerrone, Supernature. The monsters know you were there. He really wanted to make the city burn and own the desk. Be more than just the guy who copied, brought the lunches, did the day-to-day accounts, a non-concern. So going to the party was a must. Remained a must that rusted. No one asked about the peers and rivals he'd outlast or how he'd weasel win the client's trust. Instead, they pushed him stumbling to the rug, then cued the hit and circled him. Now dance, they said. That's why you're being paid. So dance he did, for cubicle and mug, while down below, the headlight hump advanced, indifferent to any move he made.
Yeah, great music in that. It was Highcroft Disco, a new poem by Alexandra Oliver. That one recently published in Fiddlehead. Alex, thanks so much for being a guest. It's been so fun talking to you about all the stuff you're interested in. I really enjoyed everything. So thanks for being here and sharing your work.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for having me, Tim, and say hi to Katie and everybody who's out there in podcast land. Thank you for coming by, and thank you for all your questions and comments. I look forward to reading them, and all the best. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, once again, that was Alexandra Oliver. You can find all of Alex's work at, the most recent books, I guess, at Biblioasis. That's
Biblioasis.
Biblioasis. That's BIBLIOASIS.com. Find Hail the Invisible Watchman, the previous books, and look forward to forthcoming books too, probably from Alexandra Oliver there. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our invited prompt lines. And now the prompt for this week was to write a poem that examines a surprising aspect of a job you otherwise generally love to do. Now, as remember, as our new format, you had to submit your poems by Sunday night. That's last night. Katie would have emailed you. She picks about 10 poets every week, trying to balance both quality and diversity, getting new faces, getting a variety, a mix of poems, trying to keep this section as interesting as possible while also keeping a relatively fixed time length. So we're looking forward to sharing your poems if you were invited. If you weren't invited this time, maybe next time, keep those poems coming in. Of course, you can always submit them for the prompt poem of the month. But sit tight, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. We're here with our
creative
editor, our prompt poems editor.
Something about a wife and a one-year anniversary in 2 days.
A wife as of a year ago. Congratulations, Katie.
Well, congratulations to you, Tim.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
So the prompt for this week was to write a poem that examines a surprising aspect of a job you otherwise generally love to do, which should be fun. I really love when the prompts explore a different angle. You get to know a little bit about somebody, because we know so many people around who do the
and it was fun reading for this week's prompt because I did get to learn a little bit about some people, which is fun. So yeah, definitely. I went to a place where I have to say I didn't know this is where I was going to go at the beginning of coming up with the prompt, but I wasn't too surprised that I wound up on the old topic of motherhood.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. So this is a Hyben. Play school. On Wednesdays, I wake her up and she starts screaming as if her own alarm clock. The night before, I dressed her in a dress with horses so as to skip the step where she squirms away as I try to button her up. I ask if she's excited to see her friends. Would she eat a little breakfast? Would she let me brush her hair? But her screams curl the wallpaper right off, and I don't know if she hears or if she knows she's crying when I pick her up and carry her down the stairs. It's hard to write this when I know the screaming makes it sound like I'm the villain here. But it's the sun that shoots into her eyes on the drive, and in that flash I see the Care Bear lunchbox I forgot inside, all the way back there, miles behind the stairs. Ringing the bell, echolalia.
Well, that's a really great poem, Katie. A wonderful. I mean, it'd be a great poem just on its own without the haiku. But then you've got all the Hyben things swirling around in it.
Thanks. I decided to kind of explore the feeling. I sometimes, if we're out somewhere and Charlotte has like a tantrum or something, people kind of, I think kind of assume that she's just spoiled or something. And so I kind of decided to let the judgment hang in the poem in the way that I actually experienced it. But I do have to say Charlotte actually had a really great week overall. Wednesday morning, not our high point this week. Not our high point.
Yeah, we won't say what happened. It's a day that will live in infamy.
Yeah.
But a wonderful day yesterday.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Well, that was a great high, but that was play school. And I went with this. I editing Rattle, I got to go with a job that's this job. And something that
we've heard that's what you do.
We've heard. I've been doing this for a long damn time. And this is one thing, coding poems. That, as you know,
people don't know. I was so surprised when I found out Tim's the one who does
every freaking night. It does get tiring, you know. You gotta make so people can have the poem fit on their phones because, I mean, really on the internet it's like 80% of web traffic now. But for Rattle readers, because we do, you know, we like our slower pace. It's only like 60%. Or 40% that's on phones. But a lot of our readers are on phones, and you got to be able to fit on the phone screen, which means hanging indents, which means every line has to be wrapped with a div tag so that the margins work right. There's no real way unless you make the whole page because there's no, you know. So
essentially you touch every single line of every poem.
I touch every line of every poem. And here is a sonnet about that experience. Coding poems. No one sees the stitching, but line by line I sew those fancy stanzas into place, indents and jammins random rows of space. No one thinks to thank me. The task is fine if tedious. No needles, just the tips of brackets pulling threads of markup tags I write by hand. And though attention lags, my fingers find the worn-out keys, the shifts of buttoned emphasis, then run around the hidden seams, down or home down, right up, and paste and paste and paste. Was all that time a waste? There is a music in the rapping sound, its rhythm like a chain of deadlines faced. It's hard to count the hours as they are erased. There you go. There's a lot of freaking time.
I can't believe I think that's the first poem we've ever heard from you on the Rattlecast about your actual work with Rattle. Like, I can't believe that. Like, I write about it, and you have so much more to do. And you write, wow, that was really interesting.
Well, thank you very much.
That's what I'll think, too, as I hear you coding at night. There's a certain music in it.
There is.
Yeah. The music of longing for you to be in bed, not coding the poem.
Exactly, it is. Oh, God. And I do it the last minute pretty much every night. It's like right before bed. You know.
This is behind the scenes.
It is behind the scenes. There was a time 15 years ago where I did it ahead of time. I do a whole week at once. And that's
coincidentally before you had kids.
That's true. That's true.
Right there, that 15-year mark.
Anyway.
But I'm really excited about the invited prompt lines tonight. We've got some great poems and many different takes.
Yeah, and let's go, of course, to first our community host, none other than Dick Westheimer.
Well, hello, and Tim, I didn't know that you did work other than just read poems, you know, lean back on your reading chair and just
sigh
lazily
deeply.
Thumb through poems and wearing your beret and...
I say, we need more sonnets. Give me more sonnets.
He pounds the desk, and that's a day's work.
That's your factory foreman part of your role.
Well, tell us how the community reading was with Erica Reed.
It was wonderful, and it was our second, and consistent with the first. It was just fabulous poems. I really enjoyed getting to know Erica. I know Erica pretty well, having read with her and having worked with her in the arts here in Cincinnati, but her as a co-host, you know, she sort of revealed her humanity in ways that was really charming for the group. She, as you might know, at the beginning of each one, the co-host brings in curates a poem from Rattle and sort of spends 10 minutes riffing on it. And she chose Clemence Hurd's All My Stresses Live in Texas, which has those amazing line breaks. And it was, you know, we were all transfixed as she worked her way through that. I hope, and maybe we'll hear from people, that it's a feature that people really enjoy while they're waiting nervously to read their own poems.
Well, I've been hearing that they enjoyed that too. So.
I'm sure that, especially, you know, Dick's the host. He can't help but enjoy it. First of all,
not. I'm just mad that I can't be there.
It's been nice. I've enjoyed that experience of being hospitable without having to clean up and dust and sweep beforehand. So announcement for next month, Erin Murphy has agreed to be a co-host, and she's very excited. Everybody wants to do the job, and everyone who has done it wants to do it again.
Well, that's a sign you're doing a lot right over there, Dick Westheimer.
Definitely
That's
is.
great.
Well,
I mean,
the
I am
rattle.
really jealous. Actually, that I don't get to participate.
Well, you should sign on as like Engelbert Humperdinck or some, by some name and not show your face.
Oh, don't tempt us.
No, I think this notion that you had, Katie, that it would sort of include people who might not want to read in this space, because there have been a lot of great poems read by people who I've not seen in this space before. And I suspect it just has to do with it being what they feel is lower stakes.
Right.
But it's been great.
Great. Well, wonderful. And speaking of great, you have a nice poem for us tonight, too.
A very nice poem. A nice poem. That's like a bronze medal, I think. It's good enough to get me onto the.
Hey,
poetry.
you're on at the Olympics, so can't complain.
At the Olympics, I made it there. So just a brief note on this: for anybody who has Raynaud's syndrome, which is a blood supply issue, spasms in your fingers, there's nothing like warm water to relieve some of the symptoms. So every night after dinner I am. It's not just the water that warms my cold hands. It's not just the dish soap slipping among my fingers and flatware sloughed clean of bits of dinner. It's not just the rinse of suds, the shush of water from the faucet, the fitting of dishes in the proper slots of the drying rack. It's dreaming with the water, back up the tap, through the pump to the cistern and roof and rain to the cloud and sea, then back up the river to the creek seeping into the ground, then well and garden to roots and leaves and steamer and plate and bowl to me at the sink, washing dishes in water that warms my hands.
Well, great energy and rhythm in that poem.
I really love just getting to picture you. And this is like quintessential, like a poet doing the dishes. What are they thinking about? Bam. I love that spiraling off like that.
You know what? Actually, the poet is thinking about getting that little crust of bread dough out of the. It's such a wonderfully mindless and central, sense-filled act. I really love it.
Yeah. Well, I think I might enjoy doing the dishes later now.
Yeah. I hope you do.
I have done well, done good in the world. if that's what the poem
Thanks,
said.
Dick.
Well,
thanks so much,
thank you.
Dick.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, again, that was our community host and rattle poet Dick Westheimer with Every Night After Dinner I Am. Next, let's go to Lorraine Ryan, a first-time caller. Thanks so much for joining us, Lorraine.
Hello, Katie. Hi, Tim.
Hey.
Hi, Lorraine. Well, I'm so glad you were able to make it. I know that the weather in your neck of the woods is awful right now, so thanks for hazarding trying. Yes. I'm sure beautiful, but I'm sure also annoying. I feel bad being in Houston. I have so many friends that are in so much snow, and I've been like, it's beautiful. I know it's really annoying. I have sympathy, but also, wow, it's so beautiful.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have some fun tomorrow. Chris will be shoveling. I'll be skiing. Yeah. So, first time submitter. So, bear with me, everyone. And what a tough act to follow after Alexandra Oliver. She can surely read her poetry, can't she? What a performer. So this is, I kind of have a little sneaky take on the job. I had one job, to learn how to drive standard. So this is a bit of a memory of a boyfriend who taught me how to drive standard. Two-door coupe. We're enclosed inside a square, white, mostly freckled box of you and your first car spot. Our hearts beating louder than the persistent drumming of infatuation and your car's engine. Desire forces you to endure false starts, shudders, the gaps between speed and resistance in rotors and pads. Sorry, I went down too far. I'll just start that stanza again. Sorry, folks. Desire forces you to endure false starts, shudders, the gap between speed and resistance and rotors and paths. Here again on that testy hill, at that stop sign, where my only job is to know the alchemy of the bite point to prevent stalling, and then turn right toward home. Your voice, low in my ear, reassuring. Ease off the clutch. Now press on the gas with your right foot at the same time. We both taste the anticipation. Then we roll back again. Fear leans in and slams the brake, forgetting to engage the clutch. Silence. I turn to see your face, still singing. Do it again. You'll get it. Fed on this feast of optimism, I grow fat with confidence. And with squealing tires, grinding gears, and armrests clenched, I hurl us around the corner towards 30 years of marriage.
Well, I really enjoyed the abrupt turn at the end that I did not see coming. I mean, you start the final line and you think, if the poem was going to turn, it would have turned, but it turned in the second half of the last line. So thanks so much for joining us, and good luck with the cleanup tomorrow, but you enjoy the skiing. So
okay. And
Thanks.
Congratulations to you two on your upcoming anniversary.
Thank you.
Thanks so
30
much.
years comes fast.
Oh,
Thanks so much, Lorraine.
thanks.
Okay. Take care. Good night.
Night.
Yeah, that was Lorraine Ryan with Two Door Coupe. Let's go next to Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, Jared.
Jared, great to see you.
Good to see you. So I did the job of making poetry is the thing that I like to do. But this is a surprising thing about it. So waiting for feedback, I remembered. I dreamed that I wrote a love poem that so starkly expressed the chasm between the way I saw her and the way she saw herself that she left. She listened to it and disappeared from the dream, immediately replaced by another lover. We made love passionately until her hair got in my teeth. I stopped to pick it out, which she found cute until she found it frustrating. Then my creative writing instructor came to the dorms to distribute feedback. We all lined up to receive it like communion. As I stood in line, picking hair from my teeth, I remembered that the first vanished lover was my wife, and that we have a son together. I wondered if I'd see my son again, and then it was my turn. I read the disaster poem to the instructor, hoping he would like it.
Well, I love the deadpanness with which you write pretty much always, Jared. But here it's so interesting, too, because it's so literal and yet so like wandering off, and I keep feeling like I have the hair stuck in my teeth, even though I don't think I do in actuality. So thanks so much for sharing it, Jared.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So much fun, as always. That was Jared Campbell with Waiting for Feedback. I remembered.
And he was waiting for feedback while he was... Sorry. Always another level
the
there.
Poem within the poem.
Yeah, just hit me. Okay, I'll get there. Okay.
Next, let's go to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to be here. Okay, so I did the job of teaching, and the surprising thing is kind of the perception of teaching. Remedial lesson. Those who will not teach do their best, I'm sure, to muddle through with losses that they suffer, like lack of knowledge shared, the cold and black abyss that stares where learning could have been if charitably they would have opened their abundant stores of knowledge. They could have learned much more than they taught. Reciprocity comes to profs without pomposity. They think a teacher cannot do. I really must assign them to review.
That's great. Yeah. I love that reciprocity comes to profs without
you always like in your rhyming sonnets, you always have like one that's like such a great, like, you're not just going to Rhyme Zone and going with the first page there, like you're going to page 3. You're serious. You're there. Thanks, Brian. I love the line break. Yeah. All right, thanks, Brian. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
So Brian O'Sullivan with Remedial Lesson. And next, let's go to Christiana Doucette.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Christiana, great to see you.
Good to see you too. I think that you have an older version of this poem because I revised it after sending it in with feedback from the Prompt Poems Facebook group. And one of the questions that came up during the community gathering yesterday was, how would you like us to handle when we have a revision? Do you want us to withdraw our poem and then resubmit? That was what Dick said he believed that was.
Thank you so much for asking. Thanks for asking. I would, so long as we're still doing okay on our cap. For right now, that's true. I would prefer you withdraw it because otherwise I have to lay eyes on it multiple times through it. And also, too, as just a general note with it, I mean, I've picked poems that have typos in them before, so please also don't do that if it's a super, super minor change. Like if you put TE and mean thee, I've got you. I'm not judging. I've been there. You know what I mean? But I mean, if you have, I understand wanting to edit it more and everything significantly. So just withdraw it and resubmit it, please. And then also, while we're on the topic, thank you for bringing this up so I could say this. If everybody could try to submit their poems early this month, I would really appreciate it because it's a kind of a crazy turnaround because the end of the month is Saturday night. And then I have to open up the submissions again so that we can get the Rattlecast ready for that Monday. So it's a little crazy. So if there's ever a month you could submit early, I'd sure appreciate if it was this month. Okay, thank you, Christiana. Sorry.
Perfect. Yeah, good
Yeah. So you'll be able to hear the differences. Most of them are in the last 2 stanzas. But this is As the Tide Turns. And I should say that for the prompt, I also chose mothering because there's lots of surprising things. I feel like I'm always being surprised about new things with every stage. So, As the Tide Turns. There's summer sandals by the oven and a pair of muddy sneakers in the hall. Wedge heels she only wore a moment land on the bland area rug beside a doll. She's switched into pink velvet combat boots. Yeah, my kindergartner sure looks cute. But oh, the doom piles swelling in her wake. They eddy at the edges, full of souls who've lost their way. And when I undertake to guide their late return, she moves the goals. Frustration rises in me like a tide. The endless everyday is deep and wide. I've fallen in a time loop. There again the sneakers that I put away appear. Those slides, I swear I stowed them. They had been abandoned on the stairs, but now they're here. She is the ebbing wave, leaving the sand scattered with loose treasures from her hand. I am the ocean, sweeping up the mess fruitlessly beside her towering dunes. Often it seems hopeless. Shoals press hazards through new shallows. Each new moon reflects across an ever-changing sea. I can't resist the push and pull on me. She fills her tidal pools with spiral shells, builds sandcastles of what might be someday. I brush the grains of salty tears that swell the waterline. Time washes it away. Someday these shoes will be too small to wear. Every shoreline changes when we're not aware.
Wow. Well, I think, too, that was really interesting because we did have the old version up and seeing the edits, and I did like the edits that you made there. The last line was even stronger, and I love that you chose to address this. Like, there are not many poems I can think of that have ever, like, really acknowledged this odd aspect of being a parent, where these things come up, and then should I put them away? Do I should I tell the kid for the 15th time, or should I just, like
how often that happens?
I know how often. So it sounds like it's happening.
Oh yeah, right
out there. Some live action parenting happening here. But but thanks for sharing it. I really liked the integration with the C and everything. And I was thinking too, it's so nice when a poem gives you something that you can really remember that you can use to make processing your own life better. And I was thinking like, I really appreciate that Christiana wrote this, because now I can see, the shoes, and maybe I'll think more like, they're not always going to fit in the shoes, versus like, why are there so many shoes here? Versus that. So thanks.
I'm definitely in that second one often where I'm like, I just put these away. How do you have this many shoes?
Right. I mean, to be fair, if I could have pink velvet combat boots, I would also have them. So
yeah, they are adorable. I wish they were my size.
Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it was Christiana Doucette with As the Tide Turns. Next, let's go to Mike Bales. Been a bit for Mike. It's great to see you.
It sure has.
Thanks for asking me. I'm back. There's trouble with Zoom. I couldn't do Zoom anything for a few months.
But I'm glad you got it figured out. We missed you.
I'm here. I guess I got it straightened out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not. If I didn't get it straightened out, then it's someone else. This is my best jobs are always temporary, and this is sort of a high bun. It's the poem Seasonal. At the beginning of a term, I was nestled in books, helping college students, their lives a glistening highway stretching ahead. Each of them asked to lead them through the aisles as they followed the avenues to their futures. I rushed from student to student with instructor, to student with mother, and each story sounded like my own. And the texts, all the books I shelved, reminded me my courses of sociology and psychology. In their eager faces, I saw reflections of my life when I was young. I found myself in this place helping students start their semester, like a parent or older brother, and sending them on their way. But I had forgotten the job was temporary, like my first love freshman year. After the store grew quiet, I sat in a back room and boxed unsold books to return them to their publishers after the students settled into their routines. For every hello, a goodbye.
Yeah. Well, I love too that we know you were a flagger, and we've gotten to hear poems about it because you smartly draw upon the things that you've done in your life to let us in and let me know some stuff about a job I might not have otherwise gotten to know very much. So thanks. And it's great to see you again, Mike. It's been too long. I hope you've been crushing it at karaoke.
Pretty well. Did
Nice.
a few nights. I did I'm Down Saturday night, the flip side to the song Help.
Nice. I know you're doing the Beatles too. Sometimes I hear a Beatles song and I think of you because I can just picture you jamming out. Yep.
Oh yeah, some karaoke people call me Beatles Mike, which is fine.
That's awesome. I want to call you Beatles Mike. Thank you for that, Beatles Mike.
Okay, thanks.
All right,
Mike.
take care.
Yeah, it's Mike Bales with Seasonal. Cool job there. Next, let's go to Michelle Rosario.
Hi.
Hi,
Hey,
Michelle.
Michelle.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for the invitation. I felt like Charlie with the golden ticket. I got so excited.
Oh, that's
So-
wonderful.
So I'm not gonna say much about the poem because I think it's like I think I did a good job explaining what I wanted to say.
Great.
So the title of the poem is Left. My mother forced me to do many things, to believe many lies, tightly cramped inside my clown car of a brain. Now I fiercely write to open up those old boxes, grab the dusty trinkets within, the shattered pieces of forgettable value, the clocks that stop before reaching the finish line, to discover what's left. I am left-handed. My mother didn't tie up my dominant hand so I could learn to be right. For that, I am grateful that she kept my purple crayon right where I made it into an extension of my being, rather than where she placed it to begin with. She spared me from renouncing yet another part of me. I might be upset at the ink smears, the pages that must turn to tell my story, the weird angle of my elbow, or how the correction tape lacks the correct groove my left thumb requires. But I was left to be left, to savor my sinistry.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, I thought this was such an interesting exploration of the many ways in which left applies. And then also, too, I grew up with two parents that are both left-handed and then had 3 right-handed kids. So I would see them, using things. And my mom has told me how incredibly frustrating it was at times. And so I felt like I really gained insight into that thanks to your poem.
And it's so funny because in my family, there's me and my brother are the only ones that are left-handed. And we grew up in a culture where people will still try to push kids to be right-handed.
Yeah.
So the fact that my mom was like, no, I'm just going to leave it be, it was great for us.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And great to see you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was Michelle Rosario with Left. And let's go next to John Arthur.
Hello, how you doing?
Hey, John,
Hey,
great to see you.
Yeah, really nice to see you again.
You as well. So I did hosting an open mic as the job. So
Nice.
and it actually did end very abruptly with the cafe basically telling us this is your last night on the last night. So
That's great.
So this is called 2-Song Limit. For 3 years every Thursday she sang at the open mic. It was the only time her mother and father sat at the same table. I used to watch their feet tapping along in sync to the beat. She was maybe 16, singing Etta James or Patsy Cline or Stevie Nicks. Her voice could carry all of it. When I told her the cafe was closing, that this would be the last week, that we all agreed she should be the one to sing the final song, her face statued, she declined. So I closed it out with a haiku composed on the spot. No need to flip the chairs. We'll leave. Our crumbs on the floor.
Well, I have to say, John, it's harder to have a more postmodern moment than announcing that you're going to have the haiku and it's there. But I have to say that would be like the best one to read live too, because the problem, as you know, with Hyben and reading them is that there's like that weird pause, if you're just at a normal reading and people are like, is the poem done? What am I supposed to do? But you tell them, hey, I'm about to read this haiku, and then they see it coming and they enjoy it all the more. So...
Yeah, I put that in there. I was like, I have no idea if this is ridiculous to announce it like that, but
well,
what's it going to hurt?
It was very popular in the prompt lines group too. I peek in there from time to time, try not to weigh in too much on individual poems, but for good reason. So thanks.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the people who gave feedback because, it helped. So thank you all.
Great.
Very cool.
I will see you again on Sunday because we were doing our One Art / the Poetry Box reading. So we will be reading and you will see me try to handle some Hyben and get to hear you read from your book too. So thanks for writing the poem being here.
Yeah, very cool. And we might as well say we
wait.
can find that at, what is it, oneartpoetry.com? What's his website?
I think so. Okay. I'm very on the spot. One Art, a journal of poetry. Mark Danowski, the main editor. Great place. I'm the haiku editor too, so I'm speaking from inside.
Yeah, One Art is a great place, and so much overlap between our audience and Mark's. And,
wonderfully.
Yeah, just type in One Art Poetry into Google. You'll find it there. And looking forward to it on Sunday. What time?
Oh gosh. Do you know, Don?
I think it's 1 p.m. Eastern. I should probably know. I have to go to a birthday party for like a 5-year-old beforehand, but
right.
1 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Eastern, something like that.
I expect for you to show up to that reading with your face painted and a balloon.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna show up with glitter all over my face just
Please,
to, you know.
please, just do
Yeah.
it. Just do it. All right.
To rep your book. So.
Thank you. Great. And I'll show up with a giant elephant and we'll be good.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Good to see you.
Okay,
right,
so now
have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, so I can confirm oneartpoetry.com. No, just oneartpoetry.com. Yeah. /readings. You can find it there. It is Sunday, March 1st.
Yeah, I have that in the calendar.
And 2 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
Okay.
And this concludes the sloppiest promo of a poetry reading ever done.
Just sloppy makes it more memorable, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I always tell
Well, it's better than nothing, I suppose.
There you go. Okay. So next up, let's go to Anne. Hey,
hi.
There you are.
Hello.
Hi.
It's nearly 4:00 in the morning here.
Oh
so
my gosh.
I'm
Oh,
flagging
we
a bit.
Oh, well, thanks so much for staying up with us. If I'd known, we would have jumped you
I
on
feel
first.
guilty, but very pleased you're here.
Thank you for inviting me. I think the poem stands for itself. Directives. I reveled in recruitment, wrote interview reports, extolled the skills of gold star candidates, smarter than old egocentric farts who ran the company. I rebelled in vain against quotas officiously maintained for those who didn't tick the unofficial boxes. Verdict: managers were not convinced the candidate would fit in.
Well, I loved how intensely targeted this poem felt to me. It felt very constrained in like a way that really added to what you were writing about. So I thought it was super interesting, and I enjoyed that it was in couplets too. I thought that was great. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks so much. And where are you calling from?
I'm calling from France.
Oh, how
yeah.
lovely.
Well, wonderful.
Wow,
Yeah, thanks so
great.
much.
I really appreciate you joining us. How lovely that you did that. And thanks for ticking the box that you would come and be a part of this.
Yeah.
So thank you. And thank you for writing this poem.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anne. Yeah, that was Anne Iris with Directives, all the way from France. That's wonderful. Now let's go. I think we have one last poet on the line. Thomas Mixon is here. Oh, and Carla too. Okay, never mind. We have two more poets on the line. Sorry.
I turned like nobody. No.
Hey, Thomas, how you doing?
I'm the penultimate. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I enjoyed learning. Well, I guess you're going to read it first, but I enjoyed the reading the note on this one in particular. I have to say, this week it was surprising.
Oh, thanks. All right, well, I'll jump right into it then.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, it's called Straight Edge. I didn't drink or carry change, so sang whatever song American Idol had made popular that year. When I delivered shitty pizzas to shitty folks who didn't tip, I looked a bit like Clay Aiken then, and only took one blow to the face after bad falsetto. Mostly, folks took their bacon and pepperoni away, would skip out on my choruses. And because you always had some, instead of beer, after work, we licked powder from your skull tattoo, my tongue forever stained by tang.
Great details in that, Matt.
So this makes me like sad that I didn't have these kind of jobs. I kind of just went like right into poker playing. I sold cheese at a farmer's market and was a chef for a little bit, but that was like very short lived. And I kind of am sad I didn't have these like pizza delivery stories and getting to hear like you looked like a very famous celebrity.
It was at a strange time in the early aughts, and yeah, I mean, it's 20 years ago, whatever now, but yeah, I thought maybe it was just like the people of that, going back to suburbs of that town, like, I don't know, maybe they don't get out much, maybe that or whatever, but then like I went to college, and then I had a friend that I came back, and she just had the Clay Aiken photos all over my door. So what do you do when you're presented with that? You leave them there and you just lean into it.
Yeah. And I think people forget how incredibly famous he was for a brief amount of time. Yeah. Like I have a cousin, and the cousin actually like dragged me to a Clay Aiken concert. Like she was obsessed with Clay Aiken. So she would have loved a delivery from you, apparently. Although I never would have said that you looked like Clay Aiken on the top of my head. So
Maybe I'll get back into it and clean up a bit. So.
Well, thanks so much,
Yeah,
Thomas.
thanks, Thomas.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one. Thank you.
Yep, you too. There's Thomas Mixon with Straight Edge, and there are actually 2 poets left
Oh,
still.
yeah, we have Rick, too.
I don't know
We're
what
so
I'm doing.
lucky.
I'm butchering this end of the show.
No, it's all
Let's
right.
go next to, though. We'll go to Carla and then Rick.
Okay.
Hey, Carla, how you doing?
Hi, Carla.
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for everybody and all these great poems and the interview. And I have a very short poem. And my work is swimming outdoors. I do a lot of it. And the surprising part of it is that swimming in cold water can be pleasurable. And I find pleasure in it.
Yeah, that's surprising for sure.
I've said that. Yeah, I agree. I'm Team Carla on this. Okay, go ahead.
Thrust. Cold water is harder to move through, but somehow grants me more pleasure to push as much and as fast as I can so as to feel the fresh without freezing my flesh.
Yeah, Carla, I thought it was really effective to read the poem. Like the way that you read the poem too, with the spacing, is exactly how I heard it in my head. And it really gave the actual sensation of trying to move through cold water in a really cool way, like a different kind of concrete poem or something.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying for that. So I really appreciate your appreciation of it.
It was very sensorial, if I can
yeah.
say that. And also, too, I don't have the note in front of me, but I prefer this title. I remember, I think in the note that you put
Yes.
like that or that, I prefer this title. I think you went the right choice. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carla.
Cool. Thanks, Carla. Yeah, it was Carla Schwartz with Thrust.
It really makes me want to do the cold plunge because I was talking about wanting to do
we were
that
just talking about that
recently.
because I did a float.
You did.
I went to a float tank.
That was my
It's a
Valentine's Day present for Tim, was mandatory time chilling out for himself because he never takes time for himself.
You know, just laying there for an hour on water so salty it felt like oil or something. It was strange. But they did have an ice tank there as well. Which
So you didn't tell me that. Now I want to go.
Okay.
I want to go. I love the cold plunge.
Yeah, they had one, but it was not.
Nice.
I did not do it, and
Well,
I will not.
I
do
would
it.
do it.
But anyway.
All right.
But that was fun. Thanks, Carla.
Yeah.
And now, last but not least, is our friend Rick Pongratz. Great to see you, Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hello, it's good to see you too. Thank you so much for having me. My job I enjoy doing is brushing my daughter's hair. And the surprising thing about why I like that is that the more knots there are in it, the better. So it means I get to hold on to them a little bit longer.
Aw, that is the
That's
sweetest.
so
That really
sweet.
is.
This is such a sweet poem. Sorry, spoiler alert. Okay, sorry. So sweet.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Tying strands together. There was always howling as she came in with a rush. For 14 years, she sought me out, crying foul on her tangles. She'd sit next to me and hand me a brush. When she was a toddler, I called her my little thrush. With her feather-like hair, knots everywhere, sweet fowl there, always howling as she came in with a rush. With gentle strokes of my hand, I would coo and shush, and inch by inch, quivers would calm in the flesh of her jowls. Her tangles gone, she'd sit next to me, my hand on the brush. When she was a tween, I tried to shelter her from the crush of body shame boys and bullies, but she only scowled. There was always howling as she ran out with a rush. Now teens run in flocks, her locks longer and lush. There's makeup, media, and menacing men on the prowl for her tangles. I miss her next to me, handing me a brush. Her thoughts are gnarled, kinked and snarled. Still, my bird will flush once in a while. She'll fake a cry and give a half growl for an excuse to howl as she comes in with a rush, to talk of her tangles, sit next to me and hand me a brush.
Oh, that is the sweetest.
That's really sweet. Yeah, really wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Rick, and sharing that. What a wonderful thing to get to have that, immortalized in a poem. Makes me happy.
Yeah, definitely a few
Thank
poems
you so
doing
much.
that. That's great.
Yeah, thank
Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Yeah, it was Rick Pongratz with Tying Strands Together. And that's going to wrap up the invited prompt lines for tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for sharing their poems. And then, so as a reminder, we are going to want all the prompts that are currently active. They're going to be turned in by Saturday. Because that's the last day of the month, even though it's the 28th, which is hard for me to wrap my head around every year. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to try to send out the responses as quickly as possible. And then the category will reopen with the prompt we're about to reveal to submit that poem. And if you submit it by Sunday night, I'll be picking the invited prompt lines for everybody to share exactly a week from today.
Ooh, that's going to be complicated. It's going to be rough.
Yeah, I don't really know how I'm going to do it, but
we did it last
it's going to
month,
happen.
Too. Yeah, there's a 1 in
but
7
this is
chance
actually
it
harder.
happens. And
No,
now
it's
it
happening twice in a row.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess it's not a 1 in 7 chance.
I don't know. I just rolled with it.
I don't know how you do the math. But anyway.
Don't do it.
Because there's a leap year too, or
no,
it wouldn't be like this.
Just don't. It's hard enough. Okay.
It is hard math. Okay.
All right.
Anyway, let's wrap up with a haiku. And what'd you have for us, Katie?
Why I have my form.
Okay.
Oh wait, what did you just do?
Oh, I put 2, but I didn't. Never mind.
Oh, you're just showing off.
No, sorry.
Okay. Anyway, this is my haiku. It's a dojoku.
A doku. That's what we decided last time.
Okay. The context always matters. Loose tooth. This is actually from one of Lizzie and Charlotte's friends. Has the cutest loose tooth I've ever seen. It's like she lost one of the top ones, and then the other one is migrated to the center of her mouth, and it's like just hanging on just barely. And I got to see it again today at Girl Scouts.
Aww.
Still in.
Nice.
That's the update. Anyway, so that one's for her.
It is extremely cute.
Because I was thinking about how a loose tooth, it's such a rite of passage, but then it also can be a very sad thing, depending on the context. So
definitely. Well, at that same place where we saw the tooth was the Learning Zoo, where we had a birthday party yesterday. Mm-hmm. And actually, a similar place that I can get confused with the Learning Zoo is the 7 Acre Wood, which is like a similar kind of like little farm thing.
Everybody's going to be so set to raise kids in our specific area.
But there's a lot of great places. But anyway, at the Learning Zoo, we were talking about the dog at 7 Acre Wood, which made me write this little haiku, which is right here. Old dog thinks he's a goat. Bah.
Well, Lizzie is going to love that haiku. It's all downhill from there.
It is. Doesn't get any better than that. It's like old dog thinks it's a coat. Bah. All right. That is my haiku for the week, and that is the show for this week. Now, next week, our prompt is going to be what, Katie Dozier?
We are going to write a poem that begins precisely where you currently are in life, but lands somewhere else entirely.
Oh, that's a little frightening.
So we're calling for some dramatic turns and a lot of movement.
Always great. There's really, there's a shortage of movement in a lot of poems, you could say. So that'd be great to have some more.
Well, I sure hope so, because otherwise I'm not going to be going with the prompt. I'll tell you that much.
Excellent. Well, that's the prompt for this week. Next week, write a poem that begins precisely where you currently are in life, but lands somewhere else entirely. That's the prompt. And next week's guest in the Rattlecast is going to be Jason B. Crawford. Now, Jason is a wonderful poet with a new book called Yeet. And
what a great title. That's really exciting.
It is a great title. It's an Afrofuturist perspective, which is going to be fascinating too to talk about. That is Yeet. Jason B. Crawford is the guest. Again, your prompts, the poems that go far, basically, from where you are right now. That's your prompt for next week. The guest, Jason B. Crawford, Rattlecast number 332, Monday, March 2nd, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Good night.